Okay, so we're going to continue with the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. This will be the last revelation. We're in part 2. Krishna has addressed is actually addressing Arjuna's question regarding what is sannyasa and what is tyaga. What's the difference between the two? And Krishna has gone in and explained that they're really two versions of the same thing. And then he went on to describe the nature of the gunas. And in fleshing out the characteristics of the gunas in the areas of knowledge, types of action, doership, intellect, persistence, and now he's going to share the difference between the gunas in happiness. So we're going to pick up where we left off on verse 658 in the 18th chapter of the Yoga of Liberation.
Arjuna, now hear from me about the threefold happiness that one enjoys through practice and through which one comes to the end of a suffering. That happiness which is like poison in the beginning, but is like nectar at the end, is called sattvic happiness. It originates from the tranquility of the mind. That happiness which is caused by the contact of the senses with objects of pleasure and appears like nectar at the beginning, but acts like poison at the end, is rajasic happiness. That happiness which deludes the being both at the beginning and at the end, and is derived from sleep, indolence, and callousness, is called tamasic happiness. There is none on this earth, or in the world of gods, or any of the worlds between, who is free from these three gunas of Prakriti.
Okay, so that no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to always be doing it sattvically. You're going to be sometimes rajasic and sometimes tamasic. You don't have a say. There is no one in the dimension of battle, no one in the dimension of action that is free from these three gunas. There is no way you're going to be some kind of perfect sattvic warrior. You're going to be run by all three of these gunas at different times. And what does this mean? What is this saying? We're not in control. The only thing we're in control of is that inner quality of relationship with the divinity that lives within us. The only thing we have is that self-existent condition of being, that self-existent knowledge, that ever-effervescent stream of the inner reality that lives us. This is all we really have. Everything else is part of this world, this dance of Prakriti. When I looked at this chapter this time, I finally asked myself the question, why is this chapter called the Yoga of Liberation? Why this particular chapter? Because it's describing how to become truly liberated. It's what Gita has been saying all along, that without vigorous action, you cannot meet the unmet parts of yourself. And how do you attain liberation? By meeting your bondage. Again and again and again and again. That's how you attain liberation. You don't attain a liberation by finding a piece of liberation and hanging on to it for dear life. You attain liberation by meeting again and again and again your bondage. This is why of the revelations of the nature of action, persistence was right in there. He who is last standing wins, right? It's the one who goes forward even amidst defeat, endless defeat, endless collapse, endless failure. I remember in my 30s, I did a program with Werner Erhard, which was called the 6-Day Course. And basically, he put 200, 300 people through all kinds of ordeals. He would fabricate all kinds of ordeals. And I was in my 30s, still full of vim and vigor, and really thought, hey, I can do all these things. He had ropes course. He had these intensive programs where you had to stand up in front of a lot of people dressed in your underwear. You know, it was this whole process of going through your stuff. And I was going through my stuff really good. So then he had this one called this scenario, which we all participated in this large room, which was called the samurai game. And I went in that, I was convinced I was going to be the samurai. I was going to be doing it perfectly, right? I was going to be the perfect samurai. I lasted maybe 3 minutes. And what happens is the forces that have you win or lose are chance. And that's what Werner Erhard was able to successfully contrive, that no matter how striving you might have been or how purposeful you might have, it was not relevant. And once you're defeated, you have to lay on the floor for the rest of the program, which, I mean, you know, a lot of people. So an hour and a half I'm laying on the floor. And what I noticed was that I had not even begun the battle and I had been defeated. It was a great lesson. And I laid there for an hour and a half, realizing how absolutely not in control I was in the circumstances of my life. And the thing that was so curious, there was this sattvic happiness. There was this peacefulness that occurred. Because I knew it wasn't about me. It wasn't my efforts. It wasn't my skillfulness or lack of skillfulness. That it was just defeat. It was really hard for me to make that distinction in my life up to now because it was so about success. It was a great lesson because what I found in the defeat was this happiness that has no outer source. So liberation is actually knowing we have the right to the action, but not the outcome. So this is really how we find it out. We find it out in this 18th chapter because Arjuna is getting ready for the battle. He's getting ready for the test. And there's no doubt about it. The possibility of defeat is constantly occurring because in the war there are many battles. And all you have to do is win one more battle than you lost. And you won the war. So this persistence, this faith, this capacity to keep moving forward and not get overtaken by the negative ego story is perhaps the most fundamental message that you can take into your lives. Because the ego thrives on our defeat, on the defeat of our inner spirit, on the defeat of our aspiration, on the defeat of our strivings and longings. It takes them over and uses as evidence to keep us down, to keep us limited, to keep us powerless and small, and not know the tremendous, unlimited, infinite resource that we are in truth. This huge potentiality that lives us. Okay, continue.
The duties of one belonging to the spiritual warrior, merchant, or the service class are classified according to their innate gunas. Control of mind and senses, performance of austerities, maintaining inner and outer purity, forgiveness, simplicity, knowledge, wisdom, and faith in God. These are the ordained duties of one belonging to the spiritual class. Courage, sovereignty, firmness, executive ability, not fleeing from battle, generosity, and spirit of lordship are the ordained duties of one belonging to the warrior class. Agriculture, cattle rearing, trade and commerce are the ordained duties of one belonging to the merchant class, and service of the other three classes is the ordained duty of one belonging to the service class.
Okay. So, in India, there is the caste system. And the caste system has become a social strata. It's become a way of defining people's roles, no matter what their natures were. But the Gita was talking about innate nature. It was talking about the innate mix of gunas each person is. So a more tamasic system is more a sudra, a service class. Their best way of progress is by serving those in the other class. One who's more rajasic is in the merchant class, the businessman class. They do better through commerce and business and money making. Then there's the warrior class, the cater class. They have more, their rajas has more sattva. And so they're here for serving larger purposes. They are the administrators, the teachers, they are the warriors, they are the politicians. They're the people who are in the front end of a society. They're striving for a higher good, idealism, morality, ethics. And then there is the spiritual class, the Brahmins. And these are those who are able to move into relationship to the inner reality and integrate it in their lives. And their purpose is to guide the rest of the mankind, the rest of the castes. All the castes, each caste serves that which is higher. And that is the way it was designed. So every one of us has an innate nature. We have inclinations, either tamasic or rajasic or sattvic. And that for good or for ill, that's what we got dealt. That's the cards we got dealt with. So we work with what we have. The idea here is that it's not right or wrong that you're tamasic, not sattvic, or rajasic and not sattvic. It is simply the throw of the dice. You work with what you've got. And in the mass of humanity, sattva is around 15%. So if you've got sattva, you've already won the lottery. So most of humanity is struggling in this tamas and rajas. And they are, as long as you're in tamas and rajas, then you're definitely, there's no way out within tamas and rajas. Only with sattva, and sattva will only come for a tamasic or rajic system if there's been some kind of awakening, some kind of breath of fresh air that sattva can bring. No matter how educated you are, how well trained you are, how much information you have, if you haven't broken out of the rule of these gunas to find the sattva in yourself, then there is no progress. You're simply running on your version of the hamster wheel. So now Gita is showing you how to take what you have and evolve it. How to take what it is, the cards you've been dealt, and how to go forward with where you are, the attitude, the orientation to go forward with where you are in order to evolve, to progress. You're always going to have some quality of your innate nature. But once the inner realizations start occurring, the sattva starts coming forward, transformation starts occurring, and the caterpillar becomes a butterfly. Literally, a transmutation occurs in the balance of the gunas in our system. So we're not doomed to these things. On the spiritual path, we become to a state of consciousness, ultimately, that can include the three gunas, no matter which is the one that's more dominant in our system. Okay, let's continue.
When a person is devoted to his ordained duties, he attains perfection. Now hear from me how it happens. The all-pervading Supreme, who is the source of all action drives, can be attained by worshiping him through performance of one's ordained duties. It is always wise to follow one's ordained duty, even if it appears to have demerits, than to embrace another's duty, which may appear to be full of merits. A man shall never incur sin if he truthfully performs his ordained duties. Arjuna, one should never give up his ordained duty, even though it appears as having fault in the beginning, just as fire is enveloped by smoke at the initial stage.
Okay. All right, this is part of three revelations in this part of the chapter. Krishna is revealing the path of action once again. He's pulling it together in this 18th chapter, which is in some part the summary of all the rest of the Gita. So it's a path of action, then he will reveal the path of knowledge, and then he will show you ultimately the path of devotion that integrates all of them. So in this case, this can be easily misunderstood. As a matter of fact, these verses are pretty much where almost in India, the Gita is said that whatever is your Dharma, if you're a householder or a forest dweller or a sannyasi, then that is what you should be doing. So Dharma is the byproduct of your innate nature. And it defines the actions that are aligned with your innate nature. When one is following their Dharma, a Sudra, being of service, then if they follow that Dharma, even if it looks like it's lesser than the Vaishya or lesser than the Kshatriya or lesser than the Brahmin, it is your path. It is your means to go beyond the cards you were dealt. So there was this stratification that occurred, this sort of growing into a misinterpretation of this, such that once a Sudra, always a Sudra. The principle of this idea of being able to evolve or progress was not part of the understanding of the Gita. But in fact, this capacity for evolving, this capacity for transformation is really what it was pointing to. But it was pointing to letting your innate nature have this opportunity to complete its samskaras and vasanas, to complete its inclinations and its impressions and its desires. In that process, then, there is a way that you avoid creating new karmas. And in the process of taking actions based on your own dharma, not getting attached to the outcome of them. So you begin to not only unwind your past karmas by completing them, but you don't accumulate new karmas by not being attached to your outcome. So there's this way through your dharma, this way of practice, way of taking action, so that you can undo the inclinations of karmas by completing them, and avoid creating new karmas by being detached from the outcome or action through renunciation. Now the Gita was saying renunciation is not enough. If you're a Sudra and you renounce action, then the innate actions, the innate karma is still stuck in you. And even if you did come to a state of sannyasa, it will limit what is possible for you to experience. It's only through action, selfless action, acts of sacrifice, charity, and austerity, can you go beyond that body of baggage that you brought with you into this life, or that you inherited in this life, in order so that true liberation can occur. This idea of Dharma as a means of evolution really wasn't apparent until modern time. People were pretty much born into whatever their life was determined by who their parents were and what they did. That was pretty much it. In the medieval times, and even in Western culture, this is how it was. There were the lords and there were the kings and queens. There were the merchants. It was, if your father was a shoemaker, you were a shoemaker. That was the only thing available to you. This idea of evolution didn't come until the age of the Enlightenment, the Renaissance, and the modern age. Now we know that what the Gita was talking about was not that you're doomed to what it was that you're born with, your personality, your nature, your resources. You can develop, you can get better. Even outer world, the whole Western culture is based on this ability of lifting yourself up by your own bootstraps, being able to create a new life for yourself. So this wasn't always true. So the tendency, or for these verses, to justify in the past that Dharma, what was your Dharma, the wise man follows one's ordained duties, even appears to have demerits, than to embrace another duty. It was like validating that principle. But really what it was saying is be with what is. Start where you are. Meet what it is that's in you that's still obscure, still tamasic, still rajasic. Meet the parts of your unmet parts. And in that process, you will then evolve in your dharmas, whatever the nature of the dharma. You will transmute them. Is it possible for one who is a Sudra to attain the supreme state? Yes. In the right circumstances, through service alone, one can become God. And if one becomes God, then you're given the yoga of intellect, and then you will know the absolute. All the monks, all the nuns, all the renunciates, all the sannyasis, that was the opportunity. Because if you sit still and you pay attention, everything that's in you will arise. If you don't act on it as a renunciate, you'll create a fire by not acting on it, and it will burn the samskara. It's called the yoga of knowledge. So through serving in a monastery, denying family, denying sex, denying the pleasures of the ordinary human life, one also, through that action of service and focus and devotion, burned in a fire, quietly, in your cell, of the inclinations that you were born with. And in this way, purifying them. So reading the whole Gita is necessary to understand that a true battle is always with where we are, the unmet parts of our own system. Coming to terms with them is the real battle. It is also the real yoga of liberation, Moksha yoga. It is the action of being with what is arising, doing the duties that are necessary for you based on your innate nature, and not assigning value or importance or the lack of importance to any of them. So you don't need, and this is the error of many Westerners, is to run away from their lives, to run away from their innate nature, to run away from the samskaras of what it was. They were born to work out, and therefore they're striving on the spiritual path for something other than that, but in repulsion. They're running away from, seeking freedom from some other place than where they are. Only true freedom is here, right now, facing what is arising. This is the only path to liberation. This is the real battle. Our capacity to meet each moment, to meet what is arising that we have been denying or resisting or opposing, is the true battle. And our system is the battlefield. Our body is the battlefield in which Dharma is resolved. Literally, Dharma is the action that's consistent with our innate nature. But in this journey, our innate nature keeps shifting. So finding the Dharma that's consistent with our innate nature is a continuous newness, a continuous unfolding. From tamas to rajas, and from rajas to sattva, and from sattva to that which is beyond sattva. This unfolding occurs in our capacity to meet each moment as it's occurring. This is the message, not to be confused, that it is not that you're doomed forever or that you can hide out forever in whatever is comfortable and familiar. The innate nature of every being, in fact, is the Brahman. And the Brahman, the Absolute, the Sat, is seeking to manifest its infinite potentiality through you. So your true ultimate Satya Dharma, the highest Dharma, is to constantly perfect the capacity of that innate reality to manifest itself as you. This is the yoga of liberation that's being pointed to, and this is the ordained duty that's being pointed to in this time, in this era. Okay, continue.
An awakened seeker who has controlled the mind attains the state of actionlessness through the path of renunciation by withdrawing with intelligence from desire and keeping aloof from enjoyment. Arjuna, now hear from me how one who has attained perfection in the state of transcendental action realizes the supreme through knowledge.
So let's hold right there. This is Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's teaching, transcendental meditation. It was to take you into a state of consciousness where there was the self, and the self acquires no sin. So therefore acquires no new karma. So the taking action in the state of transcendental consciousness does exactly what I'm saying. It undoes the propensities and the inclinations of your past nature. And it, in the process, reveals more and more fully your transcendental nature. So this is what this is now showing. One who has some success in action, in transcendental, in that state of transcendence, in consciousness, being able to be in touch with the inner self, the inner reality, then this next revelation becomes available to you. This particular aspect of the Gita, the path of knowledge, becomes available to you so that you can become more and more established in that transcendental state. Continue.
Endowed with pure intellect, controlling the mind with firmness, abandoning sound and other objects of senses, casting off attraction and repulsion, dwelling in solitude, taking light and sattvic diet, controlling the mind, body, and speech, and constantly being devoted to the yoga of meditation, cultivating dispassion, forsaking egoism, brutality, arrogance, lust, greed, anger, luxuries, and selfishness, and being tranquil, he becomes fit to be one with the Supreme.
So, in the course of our lives, of fulfilling our ordained duties, whatever they may be, for many of us in the West, it's as simple as providing for our own maintenance and subsistence. For others, it's a family with children, or family responsibilities that have been passed down to them. Whatever that be the arena that you were born into, it's not necessary to stop those permanently. It's what is, though, necessary is periodic periods of retreat, of stepping out of your life and to strengthen the transcendental aspect of your nature through this forsaking and purifying any inclinations that you've picked up in the process and being able to expand your ability to continue to meet what is arising within yourself that's still dark, that's still unmet, that's still unseen, that still binds you and binds those that you relate to. So this is speaking that there's action done in this transcendental state, and then there's periods of retreat where you move into the transcendent aspect. You move into a more profound and deeper relationship with the Absolute. Then you return into the ordeal of your life. And in the process, you take that higher consciousness and you bring it into the content of your life, lifting it. Each time that happens, then you take another retreat, you go into another transcendence. And you can go higher, you can stay longer, because if you've lifted the foundational paradigm, the foundational samskars and structures. Then when you re-enter your life, you're even more transcendent, more capable. In this process of transcendence and then transformation, that's what lifting it up, the content of your life up to, this process allows for us to begin a journey where we undo these ancestral karmas, these innate natures, sufficiently that we can attain that which is the reality that lives us. Literally without giving up any of the outer form. The outer form can be there, but in your transcendent state, your relationship with it is utterly different than before you began the journey. So, in one sense, nothing is truly lost. And that is actually useful to do this spiritual path within the framework of your life, to develop your own individuality, to come and meet the lessons that you were destined to go through, to experience the triumphs and the defeats, the depressions and the exaltations, the periods of happiness and sorrow. It was in meeting them in this process, we create a sense of innate wisdom, a sense of knowing our limitations and knowing what we can do and what we can't do. We become wise. We get to know ourselves. And in this process, that transcendent state becomes available to us. When it becomes available, we can manifest it through our life experience, through our life wisdom, through the maturity and the evolution of our individual ego, our individual personality. We reach a state of maturity, inwardly and outwardly. Then we're useful. So it's like cleaning a pot carefully instead of scraping everything away, such that the pot can be reused. So that's exactly what the spiritual path, this Gita's path, is about. It's about transforming, not destroying. Okay, let's continue.
When merged with the Supreme, one becomes serene and does not mourn, nor does he desire. He accepts me with the supreme devotion. After attaining that state of supreme devotion, he knows me in reality and enters into my being. While being merged in me, he is able to perform all ordained duties and attains the supreme state by my grace.
In the Gita, Janaka was the model that Krishna pointed to. He was a king, and he attained the supreme state, but he had castles and concubines and authority and work, and he was constantly busy maintaining the kingdom. But he lived in this state of freedom, and he used his position, he used his resources, he used the capacities that he had learned in the course of his life to teach, to show to his subjects how to be. And it was an era of tremendous prosperity because he had he had kept together the innate qualities that he was meant to develop this lifetime. He had completed his journey as a human being. Therefore, completing the journey as a spiritual being was more full and more totally capable of being expressed. There was no part of life that is not divine if we are in the right state of consciousness. There is no destruction, no creation. More better or worse. If you're in the right state of consciousness. Everything is a lesson. Everything is a showing. All these are necessary in the huge plethora of Prakriti and her dance, through all the gunas and all the matters. Our ability to be in relationship with that, to include that, to hold that, gives us the mastery, the capacity to manifest a higher possibility. But if we haven't been able to master the higher possibility within our own human nature, then this is not possible. We will miss the opportunity of the perfect perfection, of the divine manifestation. Yes, we can attain this. We can take refuge in the reality of what we are, but the full expression of divine as you will have been missed. So this is the path. This is of the three that he has just summarized. It has been action, knowledge, and this is devotion. Devotion is unconditional love. Full acceptance of all that is as arising, as divine, as true, as purposeful, as has a role to play in the orchestration of the existence. Able to perform all duties and attains the supreme state. Now this is what Gita is pointing to. It's pointing to an integrated state of consciousness that has not been pointed to in other teachings. It is something where you, in vigorous action, amidst tremendous conflict and trial and tribulation, you can bring forward Satchitananda, truth, consciousness, and love into the world in a way that would not be possible otherwise. Okay, let's continue.
Renouncing all actions in your consciousness to me, and having exclusive devotion to me, Arjuna, follow the technique of the yoga of intellect to reach the state of external union or eternal union with me. When you keep me in your consciousness, you will overcome all difficulties by my grace. But if, due to your egoism, you will not listen to me, you will perish. This ego in you may prompt you to think, I will not fight, but this will be in vain because you will be forced to act in accordance with your nature. That which you are not willing to undertake due to your ignorance will be thrust upon you by your nature, and you will be bound to perform it helplessly.
Okay. So my teacher was a good lesson for me. He left his family to come to the state that he came to with the 3 children and a wife, and they were still, some of the children were still being bottle fed. And he abandoned them all for 7 years, I believe it was, or 9 years. 7 years. And when I met him, he had not come back to them. So for 7 years, they didn't know where their dad was. He had come to the state. He had come to the absolute. But he had this huge baggage that he had run away from. So from the first year I was with him, from 1999, he then went back to his family. It was full of he had to face the scorn, he had to face the anger, the resentment, the consequences of his actions. I was there with him. I was sitting with him when the priests were doing a ceremony confirming his relationship with his wife. It was like, for a sannyasi, that's like a death sentence. And he was constantly trying to dismiss the influence of those forces. And he struggled the whole time I was with him having to, without say, take care of family problems. Once he returned, he was the only son of 8 children, 7 sisters, and he was the last child. His father had wealth. He was the one in the Indian culture that was responsible for the dowry and the marrying off of all his sisters should his father pass away. It was he had jumped out of the whole India family mess. I mean, I got to tell you, talk about Thomas. And he had to spend so much time with the family that the devotees hardly saw him. All the baggage had to, even if he ran away from it into the woods to find this absolute state, it came back and it was forced upon you. That which you're not willing to undertake due to your ignorance will be thrust upon you by your nature, and you will be bound to perform it helplessly. It was a great lesson. I counted my blessings that all this had happened at the end of my life. So there is no easy way out, because if you actually do come to the absolute state, you'll be thrown back into the content you ran away from in the first place. That's the problem. That's why these things persist, because we keep running away from them. We keep not meeting them, facing them, completing them. So, to any of you who listen to this, your greatest lessons are in the life that you're living right now. Now, for some of you, the life has fallen away. Then your journey is spiritual. But if your life has not fallen away, then whatever is left of it, that is, you can't get out of. That's the secret. Ordained duty is something you can't get out of, right? You can't, if your parents are aged and then you have no other brothers and sisters and you're the one that has to take care of them because they're in dementia, then That's your sadhana. That's your path. Now, knowing what it is, because some people have an exaggerated sense of responsibility or duty, and they end up binding themselves unnecessarily. My teacher used to say, and I think this is true, that the parent's responsibility ends when the child becomes a legally independent person. So once your child is 19, they're out of the house. 21. Well, 18 is it? Or 21.
21.
Depends. 21 then. They're out of the house. But the parents keep taking care of their children until they're in their 30s. They're weakening their child's ability to evolve and meet the consequences of their own karma on their own. And then what happens? Their karma comes to us.
Sure.
And unnecessarily we've taken on the baggage of our children's karma, and we become buried by them. And of course, karma is endless. So if you want to take on the world's karma before you're free, I guarantee you will be bound endlessly. There is no resolution to karma. There is only more karma. That's its purpose. Karma is to create karma. It's not to be free of karma. That's another dimension. That's another frequency than the domain of action, the domain of duty and obligations and responsibilities. So, I'm not afraid to tell someone to step out, at least for a period of time, to discover something of the reality that you are, that they're capable of, before they re-enter into their life. Even young people. It's perfectly fine to go as far as they can. They can't go all the way because they've got all this baggage. It won't let them go all the way, but they can go as far as they can in that one period of time, and then they have to go back and meet those unmet parts. This is really the opportunity of having a guru. This is how Indians saw it. They lived their dharmic lives, and they had a guru. And in the course of their lives, they would refresh themselves with the higher possibilities through their guru, and then go back to their life and more perfectly fulfill their dharma. Fulfilling their dharma means doing the tasks that are before you without attachment to the outcome, with identification with the process. It's to do the action that's required of you, staying in the state of transcendental action. This is why Maharishi Yogi was so excellent in his teaching, because he taught a method to transcend. But almost all of his people were still in the world of action. And by their link with him, they were able to move more quickly and cleanly through their dharma, through their ordained duties. Now, this is the advantage, this is the opportunity for the West. And this is what's happening in the West. People are finding teachers and gurus that are allowing them to go through beyond themselves and to come to a truer relationship to their existence. It is happening. And there are only very, very few who are ready to finish the journey. They first need to have completed all of that. And there are markers that are indications of one who is ready for that absolute last stage of the journey. Then you do have to find the right teacher to take you beyond this dimension of gunas, beyond this dimension of individual identification, into the absolute reality that you are. Okay, let's continue.
Arjuna, God dwells in the core layer of consciousness of all beings and makes everyone dance to his command by the power of his Maya, as if all the beings are fixed on a machine. Therefore take shelter in him alone, through all your moods, whims, and emotions. Through his grace you shall attain supreme peace and the eternal state.
It's like I knew. Let's stop there. It's like I knew when I was laying on the floor after my being killed in the samurai exercise that it wasn't up to me. That no matter what I had brought baggage to the situation, I didn't have any say for where I ended up. And there was this tremendous relaxation and peacefulness that came, precursor of what was later to come, that let me know that it didn't matter It did matter that I was willing to be involved. It did matter that I was courageous enough to throw myself into the situation. But what didn't matter was the outcome, because what I was in that moment was complete, at peace. And that finding that place of inner completion lets you know that nothing you do, no error you make, is going to bind you forever. That we are free from the very beginning, if we can just find it within ourselves. And that no matter what kind of bondage, temporary or reoccurring, that occurs, this is still there. And that this persistence is the key. The remembrance is the key. To keep remembering that inner quality of being, that inner reality, that transcendent state of consciousness that you are, that's the key. Because existence is defeat upon defeat upon defeat, and then you die. So let's not make more of it than that. This endless pursuit of happiness and immortality is a dream, because it's not true in this dimension. It will all devolve. It will all return to its original elements. Struggling to stay happy, struggling to live forever, is moving in resistance to the fact that everything is temporary, reoccurring, and changing in nature. Accepting that, allowing that quality of you that can, is eternal. It never ages. It needs no immortality. It's not affected by the endless changing of things. That's the true immortality. That's the true happiness.
Thus I have revealed the secret of all secrets of this eternal wisdom. Contemplate on this and do as you like. Hear now from me the final secret, the most esoteric of all truths. As you are extremely dear to me, I will reveal it to you for your benefit. Always contemplate on me, be devoted to me, have reverence and respect for me. This will enable you to come to me. This is my promise and assurance to you, since you are dear to me. Surrendering all your duties to me, take shelter in me alone. I shall liberate you from all sin. Grieve not.
This is the great assurance of the Bhagavad Gita, is that when we can move into a devotional relationship to that inner reality that we are connecting to the divine being, the supreme being, the Purushottama, indirectly, through that one little piece within ourselves. We can surrender our actions, surrender our thoughts, surrender our duties, surrender our guilt, surrender our shame, surrender our addictions, surrender our limitations to that inner reality. Then these things ultimately will not defeat us. They will be undone. We then are rightly resolved. Thinking of me always, being in relationship to that inner truth, to that divine reality, in whatever way is possible for you, through your awareness, through your experience, or through both. This is the secret of all secrets, continuous remembrance. This was the thing I was seeking on the spiritual path. I was seeking a way to stay in the state. At first I thought it was experience. I thought it was the state of experiences. All I wanted to do was just stay in that bliss, stay in that ecstasy, stay in that relationship with the divine beings, stay in that exalted, deeply profound, fulfilling state. But it kept going. It kept fading away. Somehow, by the design of my nature, I was able to hold it more than most. I could be in that state 4, 6, 8 hours often. So it was really feel like, okay, that's it. And there's just this last little bit, this last little thing I have to figure out. And that went on and on and on and on until 2007. And then that whole thing just collapsed. It just collapsed in the light of the reality that came. And it was so simple, and it was so plain, and it was so complete. It was so finished. It was so serene and full and done that nothing ever needed to be done again. So that state was permanent. There was no need to remember. The remembrance was what I was. I was that. That is what I am. I am that. But what happens from there is the nature comes back, right? And, of course, I had lived the life of a sannyasi for 9 years up to that point. So I was hip enough to know that acts, sacrifice, and charity are to be continued to be conducted even as a wise man. So I didn't go back into sex or back into work or back into accomplishment or back into money. I stayed in this pristine state and really had nothing to do. Very little to do at first. I lived in a house, in a little room, tiny little room, above daycare center, with kids screaming and yelling downstairs. Now this time, I'm still going into samadhis. They're my natural state now, so I'm going into samadhis regularly. And so loud, screaming, piercing, crashing, booming noise from children can be disturbing. But I was noticing this ability to be okay with being disturbed. There was no need to hang on to anything. There was actually became this delight that would occur. And I would come out and be in the delight, and then I'd slip back into samadhi. And then I'd come out and be with the delight, and there was no disruption. And then when that time was done, some people invited me to come and move and live with them, and then so on and so forth, my work began. And in the process, the remembrance is always there, but you take it for granted. That's the nature of this world. It's very entertaining, especially in that state. People are glorious. Any little seeking looks like just divine manifesting in that person's form. Everybody was beautiful. Everybody was just right there on the threshold of truth. Because I was in this state that I didn't realize I was in, and all I could see was their divinity. I couldn't see their humanity. So then I went through a process of re-entry where I kept seeing that these people were not that already. They didn't have a clue what I was talking about. They had no sense of what it was. They were looking to be in relationship with me, or they were looking for some kind of token to add to their belt of spiritual teachers or events or accomplishments, or their endless quest for knowledge. I was a sucker, really, that I didn't know better. Everybody looked beautiful to me. And of course it all fell apart. Only 1 or 2 people survived that time, maybe 3. Because there wasn't any true seeking. I didn't see that wasn't true. All I saw was the divinity. Now this is still my weakness. My weakness is I see your divinity. I don't see your imperfection. I have to be with you for a while before I can see your imperfection. And if anything, what I've learned is the nature of imperfection now. I've discovered in my working with people the nature of the things that still bind them. It wasn't apparent to me anything bound people, or it wasn't very serious, that everything could be overcome. Little did I understand Prakriti. Little did I know the depth and the treachery and the complexity of Mahamaya. And this is where I began to become wise. And after some years of doing this, I became useful. And now I'm here, able to help you see what it is that separates you from the reality that is so apparent to me. So this is my constant remembrance. My constant remembrance is to meet the forgetfulness. When I meet the forgetfulness in you, I know what I am. So in this way, we validate each other. When you meet me, you meet your divinity. When I meet you, I meet the nature of the condition of bondage, the nature of the condition of man. Therefore, I can assist you in seeing what it is that you can't see, even if I don't say anything. Because just in the light of what I am, it empowers the light of what you are so you can see it. So it will come up. It will rise up, not like a seeing. It will become an event in your life that you will have to resolve. instead of stay hidden or buried. And this is the miracle. The miracle I see is when things go to shit. And it's, hey, it's really working. They've lost their wife, they lost their money, they lost their house, they're living in a truck with their dog. Great sign, great evidence that they're making progress, that the divinity is manifesting. But because of the habit of ego, you can't see that, right? You can't know that. You got to be around someone like me that says, hey, that's progress. You're getting there. This is evidence. So this surrendering, if you can't find it within yourself, then surrender to where you find it outside of yourself until you can. But this surrendering comes spontaneously when one has integrated what the Gita has been telling us all along. When we have met the challenge of life, when we have met the actions that are before us, that we've not run off the battlefield when something comes up that we don't want to be with, that we stay with it, and that we move into relationship with what is arising. That's the real war. That's the real battle. So being devoted, finding a source of devotion, or finding a place in you that connects to that complete, finished, eternal part of yourself. This is so critical as you come out of the world of samsara, as you come out. Once you've come out, you can't turn the damn thing off. No remembrance is required. I was just sharing with Gita yesterday that I worked in a garden for an hour and a half because I'm trying to come down. I'm trying to come back into this world. I'm such a transcendent state that I need this physicality. I need this vigorous exercise. I need this engagement to bring my consciousness down so that I can have a conversation that makes sense to you. Because if I don't, then my conversation doesn't make sense. I can't match your listening. I can't come down. And I told her, I'm the opposite of you. You're all striving to come to my state. I'm striving to come to your state. So it's not an act of remembrance. Well, in one sense, it's the remembrance of bondage. It's the remembrance of forgetfulness. It's the remembrance of the condition from which I emerged. And of course, I've re-entered my body so I can find the match. I can find these where the ego defeated me. I can look back into my life and see all the lessons, all the failures that my life was. Defeat after defeat after defeat after defeat. And every time I was really defeated, that's when I would find this quiet peacefulness. I had an architectural business. I had 15 people working for me. I was a young architect. It was chaotic. It was incredibly demanding. And I couldn't hold it. I was not capable of holding it. And when it began to collapse, when it was no longer sustainable, I fought and struggled for 2 or 3 years, because it eventually went bankrupt, to pay the bills, to meet the obligations. I was working for an architect at that point. I had to abandon my firm, but I was contracting out work with other people who had worked with me, but I was still short 1/2 of what I needed to pay each month. But for 3 years, I tried to make it work, working myself like a dog. And then finally I said, I can't do this. So I filed Chapter 11. And in that defeat, whatever in me that wanted to be an honorable man, a person of integrity, whatever this wanting to keep my promises, all of that had to collapse. I came to this peace. I came to this completion. And a new life began from the ruins of that. A new life began. Went to Europe, traveled in a Volkswagen camper with my sister and her husband and our daughters, and both of us in 2 campers traveled to Europe for three months. Saw all the beautiful architecture in Europe, living off of hardly anything. And then the year later, we went and taught English. My wife taught English. I taught art to Japanese students in Switzerland for 6 months. New kinds of things started happening out of the ashes of that whole ambition and that whole part of my life. The death in the samurai game was the beginning of the lesson, a clue, a hint of the lesson that was to come. And it was on that basis that this realization was able to found itself. Okay, let's continue.
This secret wisdom should not be revealed to one who is not following the path of austerity, never to one who is not a devotee, nor to him who does not want to hear it, and never to him who finds fault with me. Whosoever shall teach the supreme secret to my devotees shall be considered as having rendered the highest service to me. Such a person shall definitely come to me. Also, no one among men shall do more loving service to me, or shall be more dear to me than he.
This is the conclusion of the core teaching of the Gita. Because now what has happened is someone has become Krishna. And of course, he's going to be the most dear to Krishna. It's going to be that in which Krishna is. The Arjuna has become Krishna. And this teaching, who to teach this to, this is what I've had to learn. I've had to learn that you can't teach this who is not practicing austerity, who is not actually truly striving, who is still confused or entangled with the attractions, the bliss of life. That without a resolve, without a real capacity within them, this secret will fall on deaf ears. It will be, water rolling off the back. There has to be a listening. There has to be a readiness. And even if there is, it may not be enough. Being able to discriminate who can be benefited and who cannot be benefited, this has been my lesson, my learning. I've done this poorly. I continue to do this poorly. Because it always astounds me how complete ego runs, how totally it runs the show. But the sense of profound surrender and love, I truly feel that when I look in my own experience, how it is for me, there are periods, of course, being the complete infinity, the absolute, but when I'm functioning, it is devotion. And what is devotion? Devotion is always surrender and service. It's love. Devotion is living in me as my continuous experience in this work. So when I take this action, I meet myself in this action, and the experience of meeting myself in this action is love, devotion, and all it wants to do is serve. So I could label it different way. I could say I'm serving the divine, or I could say I'm serving the divinity in you, and that this is the only thing I want to do or could do. There's nothing else I could do. There's nothing else I could live for. There's nothing else that interests me. So then you're more dear to me than he. So Krishna fulfills himself through service, through action. Krishna, the state of consciousness, is always action. This is the yoga of liberation. The yoga of liberation is one has not only liberated, they are communicating liberation. They're showing liberation. They're making liberation available to those who are ready, those who are willing, those who are capable. Okay, let's continue.
And I tell you that one who shall study this sacred dialogue of ours shall get the benefit of worshiping me through knowledge sacrifice. Anyone who listens to this with reverence and faith shall be freed from all effects of action and shall attain the happy worlds to those who are pious. Arjuna, has this been heard by you with concentration? And are you now free from your attachment born of ignorance? Arjuna said, O Lord, by your grace my delusion is destroyed, and I have gained the supreme knowledge. I am now free from all doubts and stand with firmness to do as directed by thee.
Stop. So the revelation is complete. This is the whole thing. Even having watched these videos, even having read the Gita, just the knowledge of it is enough to free you from countless lives of error and failure and defeat. Just to know this is possible. That knowledge in itself is the song of the Gita. It's the song of the supreme calling to the soul in you, and it's the soul in you that responds to the song. This is the great refuge and comfort of the Gita. To have found it, to have studied it, to have experienced it, then the possibility, the opportunity of your existence has been fulfilled. Even if there is still more lives to live, more karma to be processed, more issues to handle. The reading of the Gita, the study of the Gita, the contemplation of this scripture or any teaching is always pointing to something that is the reality, the potentiality that you are. And no matter how successful you are this life or next life, to be able to do that, it is coming. You're now then, the seed has been planted. And in time, it will sprout. And this imperishable reality, a truth of you, will come forward. It means you're the end of all your countless lifetimes, your countless errors, your countless times, to be able to hear these words, to be able to watch this video, to be able to have a sense of the potentiality, the possibility that each of you are. This is the song of the Gita. And the human in me is going into ecstasy. So it is done. It's finished. Complete. Okay, you can read the rest.
Sanjaya said, I have heard this thrilling and mystic conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. By the grace of Vyasa, I have heard the supreme secret gospel from Sri Krishna, the Lord of Yoga, while he was imparting this to Arjuna before my eyes. O King, remembering again and again this mystic conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, I rejoice repeatedly. Remembering again and again that most wonderful form of Sri Krishna, I am surprised and I rejoice. Where there is Sri Krishna, the Supreme Lord of Yoga, and Arjuna, the mighty wielder of the bow, there shall be goodness, victory, glory, and Dharma. This is my firm conviction. Thus ends the 18th chapter of Gita, entitled The Yoga of Liberation. All glory to Gurudev.
All glory to Gurudev. My love and blessings go to all of you. And may the divine reality manifest itself as you this life.